Captain Zixtal pressed his scaly fingers against the control panel of his ship. The Dominion's Edge was one of the best research ships in the Vorthek Empire. Its metal walls hummed with power as it moved through the dark space between stars. "Captain, we are getting strange readings from Sector 7, said Lieutenant Korth, his voice crackling through the speaker system. The young Vorthek officer had been watching the scanner screens for hours. Zixtal turned his large reptilian head toward the main screen. His yellow eyes studied the data flowing across it. For 3,000 years, the Vorthek had ruled the galaxy. They had destroyed every other race that tried to challenge them. The humans had been the last to fall, and that was so long ago that most Vorthek barely remembered them. "What kind of readings?" Zixtal asked. His forked tongue flicked out to taste the air, a habit he had when thinking. "Energy signatures that do not match any known technology, sir. The source appears to be hidden in the asteroid field at the edge of the system." Zixtal walked to the front of the bridge. Through the large window, he could see the distant glow of stars. The asteroid field was still too far away to see with the naked eye, but the ship's sensors were very good at finding things that did not belong. "How long since we detected it?" he asked. "Approximately 2 hours, sir. The signals are getting stronger as we approach." This was interesting. The Vorthek Empire had explored most of the galaxy over the past 3 millennia. They had found the ruins of many dead civilizations, but nothing that still had power. Most species had been weak and primitive when the Vorthek found them. The humans had been different. They had actually fought back for a while, but even they had fallen in the end. "Set course for the asteroid field," Zixtal ordered, "and wake up the science team. If we have found something new, the Emperor will want a full report." The Dominion's Edge changed direction, its engines pushing it toward the strange energy source. As they got closer, the readings became even more unusual. The energy was not random. It had patterns, like it was being controlled by something intelligent. Dr. Victor, the ship's lead scientist, arrived on the bridge an hour later. He was older than most of the crew, with darker scales and small scars. From his years of research, he had been present during the final battles against the humans, though he rarely spoke of those days. "Show me the readings," Dr. Victor said, moving to the sensor station. The data made him stop and stare. The energy patterns were complex, more advanced than anything the Vorthek used. But there was something familiar about them, something that made his old memories stir. "This is impossible," he whispered. "What is impossible, Doctor?" Captain Zixtal asked. Dr. Victor looked up from the screens. His eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. "These energy patterns, I have seen them before. Long ago, during the war with the humans, the bridge became very quiet. The human wars were ancient history now. Most Vorthek knew only stories about the strange, stubborn species that had refused to surrender. The humans had been clever, but they had also been weak. The Vorthek had hunted them across the galaxy until none remained." "That is not possible," Captain Zixtal said. "The humans were completely destroyed." "We made sure of that." "Yes, sir, but these readings." Dr. Victor turned back to the screens. They matched the technology signatures from the final human settlements, the ones that disappeared right before we could destroy them. The Dominion's Edge reached the asteroid field 2 hours later. The rocks floating in space were huge, some as large as small moons. Hidden among them was something that should not exist, a massive structure made of metal and crystal, clearly artificial and very, very old. "By the Emperor's claws," Lieutenant Korth breathed. "Look at the size of that thing." The structure was enormous, easily 10 times larger than their ship. It was shaped like a long cylinder with strange curves and angles that hurt to look at. Most of it was dark, but lights were beginning to flicker on in some sections. "It is activating," Dr. Victor sighed, his voice tight with worry. The energy readings are increasing rapidly. Captain Zixtel felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of service, he had never seen anything like this. The Vorthik were supposed to be the masters of the galaxy. They had conquered every world, defeated every enemy. But this thing, whatever it was, felt different. It felt dangerous. "Send a message to Imperial Command," he ordered. "Tell them we have found something they need to know about. And prepare the boarding teams. We are going to find out what this thing is." As the Dominion's edge moved closer to the ancient structure, more lights began to glow. Deep inside the massive facility, systems that had been sleeping for 3,000 years were starting to wake up. Something was stirring in the darkness, something that had been waiting for this moment. The Vorthik had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be afraid. But as they looked at the mysterious structure floating in the asteroid field, some of them began to remember. The humans had been clever, and they had been stubborn. And perhaps, just perhaps, they had been more prepared than anyone had imagined. The age of Vorthik dominance was about to face its greatest test. Hidden in the cold darkness of space, humanity's final gift to the galaxy was beginning to awaken. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same again. Jake Collins felt cold, very cold. He tried to move his fingers, but they would not obey him. His mind was foggy, like he was trying to think through thick water. Slowly, very slowly, warmth began to spread through his body. A soft voice spoke, near his ear. "Revival sequence complete. Welcome back, Jake." Jake's eyes opened. Above him was a curved ceiling made of smooth metal. Lights were blinking in patterns he did not recognize. He was lying on something soft, and there were tubes and wires attached to his arms and chest. "Where am I?" he asked. His voice came out as a whisper. "You are in Project Lazarus, Facility Alpha 7, the voice said. It sounded like a woman, but Jake could not see anyone. "You have been in cryogenic sleep for 3,214 years. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. 3,000 years. He sat up too fast and immediately felt dizzy. The room spun around him, and he had to grab the sides of the bed to keep from falling. "Easy," the voice said. "Your body needs time to adjust. The revival process is always difficult." Jake looked around the room. It was larger than he had first thought, with dozens of other beds arranged in neat rows. On many of them, people were starting to wake up. Some were sitting up. Like him, others were still lying down with their eyes closed. "Who else is here?" Jake asked. 47 other individuals were selected for this facility, the voice replied. "You are all specialists in military tactics, science, engineering, and other essential skills. You were chosen to represent humanity's best hope for survival." Jake's memory started to come back. He remembered the war with the Vorthik. He remembered the final desperate plan to hide some humans in secret facilities scattered across the galaxy. He remembered volunteering to be frozen, not knowing if he would ever wake up. "The Vorthik?" he asked. "They rule the galaxy now. They have for 3,000 years. Most other species have been enslaved or destroyed. The Vorthik believe that humanity is extinct." A woman in the bed next to him sat up. She had dark hair and intelligent eyes. Jake recognized her, Dr. Lisa Martinez, one of the best genetic scientists humanity had ever produced. "They think we are dead," she said, her voice still rough from the long sleep. "Good, that gives us an advantage." More people were waking up now. Jake saw Commander Ryan Burke, a man who had been famous for his tactical brilliance during the war. There was Amy Foster, who had been the youngest ship captain in the human fleet, and dozens of others, all carefully chosen for their skills. I'm Helen," the voice said. "I am the artificial intelligence that runs this facility. I was created by Dr. Helen Carter before she died. Her personality and memories serve as the base for my programming." Jake stood up carefully. His legs felt weak, but they held him. "How many facilities like this one are there?" 12 total. Each one contains between 40 and 60 humans in cryogenic sleep. Each facility also contains advanced weapons, ships, and manufacturing equipment. We have been building and preparing for 3,000 years. Dr. Lisa Martinez walked over to join them. "Building what?" "Everything we need to take back the galaxy," Helen said. "Follow me. There is much you need to see." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were lined with screens showing star maps, technical diagrams, and data streams. The facility was huge, much larger than it had seemed from the outside. "The Vorthik have grown soft," Helen explained as they walked. "They have ruled for so long that they no longer expect real resistance. They have spread themselves thin across thousands of worlds. This makes them vulnerable." They came to a large room with a window that looked out into space. But instead of seeing stars, Jake saw something that made his breath catch. Dozens of ships floated in the darkness, each one sleek and deadly looking. They were unlike anything humanity had built during the war. "Our technology has advanced considerably," Helen said. "The AI systems have been researching and developing new weapons and ships for millennia. We now possess capabilities that far exceed anything the Vorthik have." Commander Ryan Burke joined them at the window. He was a big man with steady hands and sharp eyes. "How many ships do we have?" "This facility has 47 combat vessels and over 300 support craft. The other facilities have similar numbers. In total, we have approximately 5,000 ships ready for combat." Jake felt a surge of hope. During the war, humanity had struggled to build even a few hundred ships. Now they had thousands, and each one was more advanced than anything the Vorthik had seen. "What about the other species?" Lisa asked. "Are there any other races left in the galaxy?" Helen's voice took on a different tone. "Yes, the Vorthik did not destroy everyone. Some species survived by hiding or by proving too useful to kill. Many of them had been waiting for someone to challenge Vorthik rule." The group spent the next several hours exploring the facility. They found laboratories full of advanced equipment, training rooms for combat practice, and workshops where robots were building new weapons. Everything was clean, efficient, and ready for use. "The Vorthik detected our facility," Helen announced during their tour. "One of their ships is approaching. This may be our first opportunity to test our capabilities." Jake felt his soldier instincts come back to life. "What kind of ship?" "A research vessel called the Dominion's Edge. It has approximately 200 crew members and light defensive weapons. It would be an ideal target for our first strike." Commander Ryan Burke smiled for the first time since waking up. "How long do we have to prepare?" 6 hours until they are in optimal position. I recommend we capture the ship rather than destroy it. We need information about current Vorthik military capabilities." Jake looked around at his fellow humans. They were all staring at him, waiting for his decision. During the war, he had been just another officer. But now, it seemed, he was their leader. "Wake up the rest of the team," he said. "We have work to do." As the other humans began to stir from their long sleep, Jake felt something he had not experienced in over 3,000 years. Hope. The Vorthik thought they had won. They thought humanity was gone forever. But they were wrong. The war was about to begin again, and this time, humanity would be ready. The small attack ship Ghost moved through space like a shadow. Its special coating made it invisible to Vorthik sensors, and its engines were so quiet that even the most sensitive listening devices could not detect it. Inside, 6 humans sat. In silence, checking their weapons and equipment one last time. Commander Ryan Burke led the team. Next to him sat Amy Foster, who had quickly proven herself to be their best pilot. Behind them were 4 other specialists, 2 engineers, a computer expert, and a weapons specialist. All of them had trained for this moment, even though they had been asleep for 3,000 years. "Target in sight," Amy whispered into her headset. Through the front window, they could see the Dominion's Edge hanging in space near the ancient facility. The Vorthic ship looked powerful, but the humans knew it was old technology compared to what they now possessed. "Remember the plan," Ryan said quietly. "We board through the cargo bay, disable their communications, and take control of the bridge. We need prisoners alive for questioning." Jake Collins watched from the control room of Project Lazarus. Screens showed him everything that was happening on the attack ship. His heart was beating fast, but his mind was calm. This was what he had trained for his entire life. "Ghost Team, you are cleared for approach," he said into his microphone. "Helen, what is the status of the Vorthic ship?" "The Dominion's Edge has extended their scanning equipment toward our facility," Helen replied. "They are trying to learn more about our structure, but our defenses are blocking their sensors. They do not know we are here." Amy Foster guided the Ghost toward the rear of the Vorthic ship. Her hands moved over the controls with perfect precision. The small attack ship slipped under the larger vessel's sensors and attached itself to the cargo bay door. "Docking complete," she reported. "Beginning hull breach." The humans had new cutting tools that could slice through Vorthic metal like paper. Within minutes, they had made a hole large enough to climb through. Ryan Burke was the first to enter. The enemy ship, his weapon ready. The cargo bay was filled with scientific equipment and supply containers. Emergency lights blinked red, showing that the ship's systems had detected the hull breach. But the humans moved quickly, sealing the hole behind them so the Vorthic crew would not lose air. "Communications array is on deck 3, said Tom Wilson, their computer expert. He was studying a map of the ship on his portable screen. "I can disable it from there." "Lisa, take Wilson and head for communications," Ryan ordered. "Amy, you and Martinez secure the engine room. I will go for the bridge." They split up, moving through the corridors of the Vorthic ship. The humans had studied Vorthic ship designs for years, and they knew exactly where to go. Their new equipment made them faster and stronger than normal humans, and they moved like ghosts through the enemy vessel. On the bridge of the Dominion's Edge, Captain Zixtal was studying the readings from the mysterious facility when his communications officer suddenly looked up in alarm. "Captain, we have lost contact with the engine room," the officer reported. "And there are strange readings coming from the cargo bay." Zixtal's tongue flicked out nervously. "Send a security team to investigate and try to raise Imperial command. I want reinforcements if this is some kind of trap." But when the communications officer tried to contact the outside, nothing happened. "Sir, our communication array has been disabled. We cannot send or receive messages." Before Zixtal could respond, the bridge doors opened. A human stepped through, pointing a weapon at the Vorthic crew. The alien captain stared in shock. He had never seen a living human before, but he recognized the species from old records. "That is impossible," he whispered. "Humans are extinct." "Not quite," Ryan Burke said calmly. "Everyone on the bridge, put your hands where I can see them. Do not make any sudden movements." The Vorthic crew was too surprised to resist. They had been told that humans were weak and primitive, but this human moved with confidence and carried weapons they had never seen before. His eyes were cold and determined. "You are ghosts," Dr. Victor said from his position at the science station. "The humans were all destroyed. I was there. I saw it happen." Ryan smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "You saw what we wanted you to see. Humans are very good at hiding. More humans entered the bridge. Amy Foster and her team had successfully taken control of the engine room. Tom Wilson had disabled not just the communications, but also the ship's weapon systems. Within 30 minutes, the entire Vorthic vessel was under human control. Dominion's edge is secure, Ryan reported to Jake through his communicator. All crew members are alive and detained. We have their databases and all their equipment. Back on Project Lazarus, Jake felt a rush of satisfaction. Their first mission had been a complete success, but this was just the beginning. Bring the ship to the facility, Jake ordered. We need to question the crew and study their technology. Dr. Lisa Martinez was already working on the captured Vorthic crew. Her medical scanners revealed interesting information about their biology. The reptilian aliens were strong and tough, but they had weaknesses that could be exploited. Their nervous system is different from ours, she explained to Jake over the communicator. They react more slowly to certain types of electrical interference. We can use this. Captain Zixtal was brought before Jake for questioning. The Vorthic officer was chained, but not harmed. He stared at the human with a mixture of fear and disbelief. How many humans are there? Zixtal asked. Enough, Jake replied. Tell me about the current state of the Vorthic Empire. How many ships do you have? Where are your main bases? Zixtal refused to answer, but Helen had already extracted most of the information they needed from the ship's computers. The Vorthic Empire was even larger than they had imagined, spanning thousands of star systems. But it was also stretched thin, with most of their forces spread out across the galaxy. They rule through fear, Helen explained to the gathered humans. Most worlds submit because they believe the Vorthic are too powerful to resist. But their actual military strength is not as great as they want everyone to believe. Jake studied the star maps Helen had prepared. The Vorthic had military bases on hundreds of worlds, but most of them were lightly defended. They had grown comfortable in their dominance. How long before they noticed the ship is missing? Jake asked. The Dominion's edge was on a research mission, Helen replied. They are not expected to report back for several days. We have time to prepare our next move. Jake looked around at his fellow humans. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. 3,000 years ago, humanity had fought a losing war against the Vorthic Empire. They had been outnumbered and outgunned. But now the situation was different. Send a message to the other facilities, Jake said. Tell them it is time to wake up. The Vorthic think they won the war, but they were wrong. The war never ended. It just went to sleep for a while. As the humans began to plan their next moves, the captured Vorthic crew watched in growing horror. They had been taught that humans were extinct, that their species was weak and primitive. But these humans were different. They were calm, efficient, and obviously very dangerous. Captain Zixtal realized with growing dread that the Vorthic Empire was about to face something it had never encountered before. An enemy that had spent 3,000 years preparing for revenge. And this enemy was not interested in surrender or negotiation. The humans had returned, and they were not the same species the Vorthic had fought so long ago. They were something new, something deadly, and they were very, very angry. Across the galaxy, ancient facilities hidden in asteroid fields and dead worlds began to wake up. Project Lazarus had been the first, but now 11 other installations were coming online. In each one, humans who had slept for 3,000 years were opening their eyes to a new universe. Jake Collins stood in the main command center of Project Lazarus, watching as reports came in from the other facilities. On screens around him, he could see the faces of other human commanders as they took charge of their own groups. Facility Beta 3 is fully operational, reported Captain Chris Ward from his location near the Galactic Core. We have 52 personnel and a full complement of ships. ready for orders. Facility Gamma 7 coming online, added Commander Kate Miller from the Outer Rim. 45 personnel. Our manufacturing systems have been building weapons for the past millennium. We have enough equipment to arm a small army. Jake felt a surge of pride as he listened to the reports. Humanity had not just survived, they had prepared. Each facility had spent 3,000 years building weapons, ships, and technology that far exceeded anything the Vorthic possessed. Helen, what is our total strength? Jake asked. Across all facilities, we have 643 active personnel, Helen replied. We have 4,897 combat vessels of various types, plus manufacturing capability to build more. We also have advanced weapons that the Vorthic have never encountered. Dr. Lisa Martinez looked up from her work station. She had been studying the biological data from the captured Vorthic crew. I have finished analyzing their physiology. We can create biological weapons that will affect only Vorthic, leaving other species unharmed. How long to produce these weapons? Jake asked. Our automated systems can have the first batch ready in 72 hours. But I recommend we test them on a small scale first. Commander Ryan Burke entered the command center. He had just returned from leading another successful raid on a Vorthic patrol ship. The enemy is starting to notice our attacks. They are increasing security patrols in this sector. Jake studied the galaxy map on the main screen. Red dots showed Vorthic military installations, while blue dots marked human facilities. The Vorthic had thousands of bases, but most were lightly defended. They had grown comfortable in their dominance. We need to change our strategy, Jake said. Small raids are not enough. We need to hit them hard enough to get their attention, but not so hard that they realize what they are facing. Amy Foster, who had become their best pilot, joined the discussion. What about hitting their supply lines? The Vorthic Empire is huge, but they need to move food, fuel, and equipment between their worlds. If we disrupt their supply chains, they will start to panic. Good idea, Jake agreed, but we need to be careful. We want them to think they are facing pirates or rebels, not an organized military force. Helen brought up a new display showing Vorthic trade routes. The Empire depends on regular shipments of rare minerals from the outer systems. If these shipments are interrupted, their military production will suffer. Over the next few weeks, human strike teams began attacking Vorthic supply convoys across the galaxy. The attacks were carefully planned to look like random piracy. Ships would disappear without sending distress signals, or they would be found empty with no clues about what had happened to their crews. At first, the Vorthic leadership did not take the attacks seriously. Piracy was a common problem in the outer systems, and losing a few cargo ships was not unusual. But as more and more shipments failed to arrive, they began to worry. Supreme Overlord Galactic, ruler of the Vorthic Empire, called a meeting of his top military commanders. The massive reptilian leader was ancient, even by Vorthic standards, and he had personally led the final campaigns against humanity 3,000 years ago. Explain to me why our supply lines are failing, he demanded, his voice echoing through the throne room. General Vekvar, commander of the Imperial fleet, shifted nervously. The attacks appear to be random piracy, Supreme Overlord. We have increased patrols, but the raiders are using advanced stealth technology. Advanced how? Galactic asked. They can avoid our sensors completely. Our ships never see them coming, and their weapons are more powerful than anything we have encountered from known pirate groups. Galactic's eyes narrowed. Show me the attack patterns. The general activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red marks indicated where Vorthic ships had been attacked or had disappeared. At first, the attacks seemed random, but when viewed together, they formed a pattern that surrounded several important Vorthic worlds. This is not random piracy, Grailtic said slowly. This is coordinated military action. Someone is making war on the Empire. But who? General Likvar asked. We have conquered or destroyed every military force in the galaxy. There is no one left who could challenge us. Grailtic stood up from his throne. His massive form cast a shadow over the assembled commanders. Find out who is responsible. Double the patrols. Question every prisoner. I want answers. Meanwhile, the human attacks continued to escalate. Jake Collins coordinated strikes across multiple star systems, always staying one step ahead of the Vorthic response. His commanders were skilled and experienced, and they had technology that made them nearly invisible. But the humans were not working alone. Word of the attacks had spread to other species that had survived under Vorthic rule. Many of them had been waiting for centuries for someone to challenge the Empire. The Zelari were a crystalline species that had been enslaved to work in Vorthic mines. They could communicate through vibrations in solid matter, making them perfect spies. When they learned that someone was fighting the Vorthic, they began sharing information about Imperial, troop movements, and supply routes. The Nephtai were aquatic creatures that had been forced to work in Vorthic underwater facilities. They controlled several important trade routes through oceanic worlds. When human ships began attacking Vorthic convoys, the Nephtai made sure those convoys took the most dangerous routes possible. Most importantly, the Luminari were energy-based beings that could travel through space without ships. They had been hiding in the outer systems for millennia, watching and waiting. When they detected the human facilities, they made contact. We have been waiting for someone to challenge the Vorthic, the Luminari representative told Jake during their first meeting. We remember the old wars. We remember when there were many species in the galaxy, before the Vorthic destroyed most of them. Can you help us? Jake asked. We can do more than help. We can show you where the Vorthic keep their most important installations. We can guide your ships through regions of space that even the Vorthic avoid. And we can tell you about other species that are still hiding, waiting for their chance to strike back. As the human campaign intensified, the Vorthic Empire began to feel real pressure for the first time in millennia. Supply shortages caused production delays. Military units were pulled from garrison duty to escort convoys. Morale began to suffer. As soldiers wondered what they were fighting against, Emperor Grailtic became increasingly paranoid. He ordered mass arrests of suspected rebels and had entire worlds search for hidden enemy bases. But the humans were too well hidden, and their alien allies were too skilled at misdirection. Someone is playing games with us, Grailtic told his commanders. They hit us just hard enough to hurt, but not hard enough to reveal themselves. They want us to make mistakes. He was right. Jake Collins was deliberately provoking the Vorthic into overreacting. Every time they increased security in one sector, the humans would attack somewhere else. Every time they sent reinforcements to protect supply lines, the humans would strike at undefended installations. The Vorthic Empire was being slowly bled to death, and they did not even know who was holding the knife. It is time for the next phase, Jake announced to his commanders during their weekly meeting. We have weakened their supply lines and forced them to spread their forces thin. Now we need to make them desperate. What do you have in mind? Asked Ryan Burke. Jake smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. We are going to hit them where they least expect it. We are going to attack their capital world. The room fell silent. The Vorthic capital was the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. It was surrounded by massive fleets and protected by weapons that could destroy entire star systems. That is suicide, Amy Foster said quietly. Not if we do it right, Jake replied. We are not going to invade their capital. We are just going to let them know that we can reach it whenever we want. And when they realize that their most important world is not safe, they will panic. The plan was simple but dangerous. A single human ship would sneak through the Vorthic defenses and attack a minor target on the capital world. The attack would do little real damage, but it would send a message. Nowhere in the Vorthic Empire was safe. 3 days later, the impossible happened. A small explosion destroyed a communications tower on the Vorthic capital world. The attack lasted only seconds, and no one was killed. But the message was clear. Someone had reached the very heart of the Vorthic Empire, and they had done it without being detected. Emperor Growltech received the news in his throne room. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had not experienced in millennia: fear. Lockdown TH. The final battle began at dawn on the Vorthic capital world of Gorthic Prime. Jake Collins stood on the bridge of the human flagship New Terra, watching as hundreds of human ships dropped out of hyperspace around the heavily defended planet. "All ships report ready for battle," announced Amy Foster from the communications station. She had been promoted to fleet coordinator after proving herself in dozens of smaller engagements. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Vorthic had assembled the largest fleet in their history to defend their capital. Over 2,000 ships surrounded the planet, with massive space stations providing additional firepower. It was an impressive sight, but Jake was not worried. "Helen, status report on our special weapons?" Jake asked. "All biological weapons are loaded and ready for deployment," Helen replied. "Dr. Martinez has confirmed that they will affect only Vorthic physiology. Other species will be unharmed." Dr. Lisa Martinez had worked tirelessly to create weapons that would target the Vorthic nervous system. The weapons would not kill immediately, but they would cause confusion and panic among enemy crews. It was a crucial advantage in the coming battle. "Commander Burke, are your ground forces ready?" Jake asked. Ryan Burke was preparing to lead the assault on the Imperial Palace. He had trained thousands of human soldiers over the past months, and they were equipped with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created. "Ready and waiting," Ryan replied. "The Zelari have provided us with detailed maps of the palace. We know exactly where to find the Emperor." The Zelari had been invaluable allies. Their ability to communicate through solid matter had allowed them to spy on the Vorthic leadership for months. They had also helped coordinate rebellions on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Supreme Overlord Growltech watched from his command center as the human fleet approached. He had finally learned the truth about his mysterious enemies. Captured prisoners had revealed that humanity had returned, and they were seeking revenge for the destruction of their species. 3,000 years, he muttered to himself. They have been planning this for 3,000 years. General Vekvar stood beside him, studying the tactical displays. "Their ships are more advanced than ours, but we outnumber them 5-1. We can win this battle." Grailtic was not so confident. The humans had proven themselves to be clever and resourceful. They had spent millennia preparing for this moment, and they would not have come unless they were certain of victory. "Begin." The attack, he ordered. The space around Gorthic Prime erupted in fire and light. Vorthic ships launched thousands of missiles at the human fleet, while energy weapons carved deadly lines through the darkness. But the human ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything the Vorthic had ever seen. Jake watched as his ships danced through the enemy fire, their shields deflecting most of the damage. The new human technology was working perfectly. Their ships could take hits that would destroy Vorthic vessels, and their weapons could penetrate enemy shields with ease. "Deploy the biological weapons," Jake ordered. Across the battlefield, human ships fired special missiles that released clouds of microscopic organisms. The organisms were designed to pass through Vorthic life, support systems, and affect the alien crews without harming other species. Within minutes, the effects became clear. Vorthic ships began to drift out of formation as their crews became confused and disoriented. Some ships fired at their own allies by mistake. Others simply stopped fighting altogether as their crews struggled to think clearly. The biological weapons are working perfectly, Dr. Martinez reported. Enemy coordination is breaking down across the entire fleet. Jake felt a grim satisfaction as he watched the Vorthic fleet fall into chaos. This was justice for every human world that had been burned, every human child that had been killed, every human dream that had been destroyed. All ships, begin the final assault, Jake ordered. The human fleet moved forward like a pack of wolves. Their ships were sleek and deadly, designed by artificial intelligences that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. They cut through the confused Vorthic fleet with brutal efficiency. Meanwhile, Ryan Burke led his ground forces toward the planet's surface. Transport ships carried thousands of human soldiers, all equipped with advanced armor and weapons. They were supported by alien allies who had been waiting for this moment for centuries. The Nephtai had seized control of the planet's oceanic facilities, cutting off underwater supply routes. The Luminari were disrupting communications across the planet, making it impossible for the Vorthic to coordinate their defenses. And the Zelari were guiding human forces through the planet's underground tunnel systems. Landing zone secured, Ryan reported, as his forces touched down near the Imperial Palace. Beginning advance on the primary target. The palace was a massive structure that had been built to show the power of the Vorthic Empire. It was surrounded by walls that were supposed to be impregnable, defended by weapons that could level entire cities. But the humans had been planning this assault for months. "Charges placed," reported one of Ryan's engineers. "Bring down the wall in 3, 2, 1... The explosion shook the ground for miles around. A section of the palace wall simply vanished, leaving a gap large enough for vehicles to pass through. Human soldiers poured through the opening, their weapons cutting down any Vorthic who tried to resist. Inside the palace, Emperor Grailtic received reports of the human advance with growing despair. His personal guard was falling back on all fronts. The weapons that had protected his empire for millennia were useless against human technology. "Evacuate the Emperor," General Vic Var ordered. "We can still get him to safety." But Grailtech refused to run. He had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. He had personally overseen the destruction of dozens of species. He would not flee from the ghosts of his past. "No," he said firmly. "I will face them here. If the humans want their revenge, they will have to take it from me personally." Ryan Burke and his soldiers fought their way through the palace corridors. The Vorthic defenders were brave, but they were outmatched. Human weapons could penetrate their armor, and human soldiers moved with precision that came from years of training. "Emperor located," Ryan reported. "Throne room, top level. Heavy resistance." Jake listened to the reports from his command ship. The space battle was nearly over. Most of the Vorthic fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The few ships that remained were trying to flee, but human vessels were faster and caught them easily. "Admiral Foster, how many enemy ships remain active?" Jake asked. "Less than 200, Amy replied. "They are attempting to retreat, but our pursuit ships are intercepting them. This battle is over." Jake felt a moment of quiet satisfaction. The Vorthic Empire's main fleet had been destroyed. Their capital world was falling. After 3,000 years of waiting, humanity was finally getting its revenge. "Commander Burke, report," Jake said into his communicator. "We have reached the throne room," Rian replied. "The Emperor is here, along with about 50 guards. They are not surrendering." Jake made his decision. "I'm coming down. This is something I need to finish personally." 20 minutes later, Jake Collins walked through the ruined palace toward the throne room. The fighting had moved deeper into the building, but the corridors were littered with the bodies of Vorthic defenders. Human soldiers stood at attention as their commander passed. The throne room was a vast chamber with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness. At the center sat Emperor Grailtic on a throne made of black metal. He was surrounded by his personal guard, all of them armed and ready to fight to the death. So, Grailtic said as Jake entered the room, "The humans have returned." At last, I wondered when this day would come. Jake walked forward, his weapon ready but not raised. "You remember us then?" "I remember destroying your species," Grailtic replied. "I remember watching your worlds burn. I remember the satisfaction of knowing that the universe would be better. Without you? And now?" Jake asked. Grailtic looked around at his defeated guards and his ruined empire. "Now I see that some ghosts are harder to kill than others." The final battle was brief but fierce. The Emperor's guards fought with desperate courage, but they could not match human technology and training. One by one, they fell until only Grailtic remained. The Emperor drew his personal weapon, a massive energy sword that had been passed down through generations of Vorthic rulers. "If you want your revenge, human, you will have to take it yourself." Jake drew his own weapon, a simple butt, deadly blade forged from materials that had not existed during the Old War. "This is for Earth, for Mars, for every human world you destroyed." The duel lasted only minutes. Grailtic was strong and experienced, but Jake was faster and had better equipment. When it ended, the Emperor of the Vorthic Empire lay dead at Jake's feet. "It is finished," Jake said quietly, but the war was not over. Across the galaxy, human forces were liberating worlds that had been enslaved for millennia. The Vorthic Empire was collapsing, but Jake was determined that the peace would be different from the war. No genocide, he ordered his commanders. The Vorthic will be defeated, but not exterminated. We will not become the same monsters they were. The Vorthic species was given a single world to call home. Their technology was taken away, their empire dissolved. But they were allowed to live,